Branson, woodcarver and sculptor from Afton, Oklahoma. I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Woodcarver's Corner. Today's subject is going to be on spirit faces and tree trolls. This is one of the first things that I started carving on when I first started carving, because it just kind of let the unique experience of the wood begin to talk to you. There's more of a freedom in carving driftwood probably than any other type of wood that you could possibly do, because Mother Nature has already done her work. For instance, these pieces that I have here on the board are various collections, not all mine. I think Vicky's got some here. I've got some, my cousin Dick Branson, and a couple other carving friends of mine that I've managed to collect over the years. One thing good about driftwood, it's always been a hot seller from the professional point of view. We've never had any problem selling any of the driftwood pieces that we've ever done. This particular large piece right here was done out of mountain laurel when I was living on the Oregon coast several years ago, and I just really loved the way that that particular beard and hair worked out on that guy, and I've managed to keep him because he was a favorite. The cedar that my cousin carved up there is one of the most beautiful pieces of wood that you could do spirit face or tree troll out of, for the simple fact that the wood has such natural beauty to it. Not only that, the root designs on cedars are the most unique because they tend to just swirl every different direction. Now this is more of the tree troll. When you hear me talk about a tree troll type subject, here he is, the little mischievous type happy guy looking out from through the leaves on the trees. A lot of people ask me, well, what's the difference between a tree troll and a spirit face? Well, the spirit situation, I think, probably comes from something where the hair is blowing and moving more. I think that's where the whole spirit thing came. Notice the way that this particular piece here, his hair is kind of blowing off. There's no hair actually carved in the piece, but it looks like hair from the natural direction of the wood. So, and not only that, he's added a cigar in this particular guy, which adds some character. I know over the years I've carved hundreds of little guys looking at each other or something with their pipes in their mouth. The thing with driftwood is you can give them names, you know, Keeper of the Woods or the Mackenzie River Watcher, or various names, Tree Talk. I've used that title several times. All of these things add to the sellability of the pieces. The general public like Mother Nature's work, and then all we're doing is just coming in and enhancing what Mother Nature has done. The other nice thing about doing driftwood work is it's so much fun out trying to find the wood, which here in just a few moments we're going to go looking for our piece of wood to create our tree troll or spirit face in. Hey, I want to welcome you out here to Tree Troll City. This is where all the tree trolls and the spirit faces live in my yard. Of course, they've lived from various parts of the country, everywhere from Table Rock Lake to the Oregon coast, to Taneycomo, to here on Grand Lake. The people that live in this particular spirit face city here behind me have been collected from all over. They're all different specimens of wood. I've got some catalpa, some cedar, some sassafras, some mulberry, some hedge, just anything that makes some real interesting driftwood faces or spirit wood faces. I really like the roots. I'm into roots. Notice this piece off here to my left. It's flat on the back. A person could just go nuts on this piece doing little Tree Troll City or the family tree or something out of this with numerous faces onto it. I picked that piece up just because it was so unique. If nothing else, I could use it for a mount to put a mounted fish or something on it. It's just, as you see from the looks of my yard here, I'm quite a driftwood nut. You know, The reason I like driftwood carving so much is the fact that when you're out collecting the driftwood on the lake, you're watching the birds and the wind blowing in your hair and the sun. It's just a beautiful time. It's a real spiritual time. And it makes you think about these spirits that are in this driftwood while you're out there. I have found, though, over the years that when you go out driftwood hunting, you really need to take this primary tool with you. A good chainsaw is a must when you're looking for driftwood because it never fails. You're going to come up on a piece that's hooked to a big stump and you can't get it off, and you need that particular piece. So I will tell you, if y'all are getting geared up to go driftwood looking out on the lake and enjoy a day, pick in the winter or the fall of the year or the early spring when it's still cold. From experience, if you wait till the summertime when it's the nicest time to be out there, unfortunately the snakes love living in tree troll and driftwood cities. The snakes are very thick, and also the hornets and the bees and the sweat bees in the summer, all types of insects, and of course poison ivy. And if you're out messing around on the edge of the lake, summer is a bad time to be caught in Tree Troll City. Now, I want to look through Tree Troll City. We're searching for this subject for this particular tape that we're going to do, and it's got to be just the perfect thing. I see, here's old Knothole Ned here. You see, he's staring out. He could have a brother over here. They might even be smoking little pipes or something, or smiling at each other. Come up with a nice twin brother type situation. Good things to take to the wood pile with you when you go is, I call this my tasting tool. It's just an old gouge that I don't care that much about. I'm out here, I want to sample some wood or taste a little of this wood, see how nice it carves. This particular piece is red cedar. It's got a beautiful color to it. I will tell you that cedar is for more of an advanced carver. It chips real easy. Got a lot of cracks and stuff in it. As far as mentioning cracks, oh, here's another old boy that lives in this city here. I think his name was Flatwater Jack or something like that. Oh well, we'll get to you later, Flatwater Jack. There's all kinds of variety. Here's another guy, Pistol Pete. Hey, he can be another day. As you can see, driftwood looking can get mighty confusing. There's so many good pieces to choose from that you begin to hoard up all of the spirit village, and you want to take them all home with you and make your own community. But then you got a mess in your yard, but it pays off in the long run. Oh, hey, here's our person right here. I thought something like this with two places to carve. On this particular video, we could do a smiling face and maybe a frowning face, or two offsetting guys, to kind of stretch out the tape and show you a little more different techniques. I may do a little bit more chainsawing on these guys, and I'll meet you guys back in the studio and we'll get started on this driftwood piece. Hi, now that we're back into the studio after that little adventure out to the Tree Spirit City, I think we found 2 or 3 guys out there. I say 2 or 3 guys. Don't want to limit them to just guys. They could be gals. But this particular piece of driftwood was what I came in the house with. The reason why I picked it is I thought we might be able to get in here and do one type of a spirit face on this portion of the log, another type of a spirit face here, and then possibly we might end up with their little brother down here in their beards and intertwine all of their hair and beards together and really make this into kind of a family scene. These particular guys would probably be along the lines of more spirit faces than they would tree trolls, but just to make it interesting, we might put a tree troll type effect on one of these guys, maybe the oddball guy that's down below. We've got the general shape of our driftwood. A lot of times when you don't know for sure where to start on the project, is kind of let your artistic license flow and search over the wood. First of all, look for the most carvable areas. Note there's no cracks, no bad cracks or anything, no burnt pieces, rotten wood. We need to get away from all of the rotten wood and bad cracks and down to good soluble carving, good carvable wood. So what I'm going to do is just kind of make a sketch of the general shape that you notice this was hooked onto a bigger tree out there, and I went ahead and sawed the knot portion out of there because I didn't like the way it was making the piece too big actually to hang on the wall. I think the big piece that I pointed out up here a little earlier was along the same lines. It was actually too big to hang on the wall, but yet I like that piece of wood so well. This is just kind of the general characteristics of the piece. And for instance, this guy over here, hairlines on spirit faces, we could either go with a V type of a hairline like this, and at this point we could begin to blow the hair back in the general characteristics of the piece over here a little bit, which would leave this particular area, let's say, for the face. And I kind of see this guy facing over towards, let's say, his neighbor or his tree spirit buddy, maybe even his brother, his little brother or something. And let's say maybe they're visiting about how many acorns is growing up at the top of the tree, or maybe the wildfire that got down in the pasture below the other day. Something that we could add some character, maybe some laughter, or this one maybe laughing hard while this one's telling a joke over here. As you can see, I'm just beginning to wander in my mind and let my artistic license flow. I'm getting a little bit of idea. This is one of the brothers, Okay, another hairline, since we used a V-shaped hairline on this one, is let's go with a heart shape on this guy's head over here. And that way his hair will part up the middle real severely and possibly go, as you can see up here on the top of the wood, we've got a couple of odd spots where I've chainsawed in various ways. So I figured we could kind of throw his hair up here off in some different directions on the top of that piece. We may lower his face down just a little more. We've got some room in our wood. Make his heart-shaped hairline. We'll begin to carve in the area. And for instance, maybe he's really laughing at what his brother's talking about. Maybe he has an abnormally large bulb on the end of his nose. Maybe he's got his own personal character that could just really let him be laughing or smiling, a big smile coming across this area. And maybe really excited. Pardon me, dropped my drawing pencil here. So the excitement's building as they're laughing and talking and smiling. So we could begin to flow his beard down, and this one's beard and mustache. This one has a mustache on this side. So we'll begin to flow them down together, which will leave us into the bottom portion on our... So on this bottom portion, we will eventually end up with a little tree troll guy with either some leaves on his head up here, and maybe he's looking upwards at the other two guys. Of course, I'm running out of paper. We have a little more wood on our piece of driftwood than I do paper to draw on. And we'll talk about this little guy that's peeping out of their beards and up to them as we go in. That'll kind of leave us something to look excited about or to look forward to. So now this is the basic structure of what we've got for our tree trolls and spirit face guys. So I'll tell you what let's do is let's go right over here to the
wood, while I have to move these other pieces of driftwood, I just as well talk a moment about them. Here is a horse head that we began to rough in out of a piece of driftwood. As you can see, there's going to be a horse head here, and we're going to use this driftwood for the mane. I kind of brought these in the studio out of my pile that Vicki and I have started at various times. Here's a girl's face where she's beginning to put the face in here and using the natural roots in the driftwood for the hair on the girl. So Vicki and I have really gotten into using driftwood over the years. We really like it. Here's a piece of driftwood where I'm getting ready to do an Indian warrior made possibly with a wolf or a buffalo headdress. I will add the horns on, and I can use this as cape or hair or anything that I want to down on the bottom. I just thought I'd show you guys some that I've started in at various times. I have learned over the years that the deeper in that you can set the faces into the hair, the stronger the piece will become for you. We talked about having a heart-shaped hairline on this particular guy over here. Now, as we well know in wood carving, you can take it off, but you can't put it back. So I find that as I'm drawing stuff in, I have a tendency to draw them way bigger than what they needs to be. I'm drawing this facial area right here. I'm going to break it up into 3 basic thirds, and that's kind of this lower 1/3 of the face, picturing where his chin is, because on our particular man, he's going to have a beard covering up his chin. But we do need to know approximately where the bottom of his chin is going to be, and approximately where his hairline is going to be up here on this heart-shaped area. Which I'll say, okay, 1/3 to the bottom of the nose. This is just general proportion, folks. When we're doing tree spirits and tree trolls, these guys can begin to gain their own proportions and their own characters. They're like carving a caricature. There's no set proportions that we have to stay regulated to. So we can begin to have fun and shape them on the way in. On every one of my spirit face carvings, I'll do the outer facial area first. As I begin to dig into the wood, the first thing I'm going to look for is the height for the nose, but yet we're going to need this type of a shape going in on this face to where we can draw his face on in and have the nose out there very realistic and deep. Notice how far out that nose sticks on my face. Look how far back the line of the mustache and beard is. There's a lot of face sticking out. One of the common mistakes or things that I see on a lot of the driftwood faces that I judge and also carve and see in wood carving shops is people have a tendency to draw their faces in, just sketch them into the wood so flatly and not get the full potential or the depth or the strength that they could have. Now these two brothers here may have their foreheads against each other, kind of visiting with each other. Maybe they've got their heads leaned in like this. Maybe they're just looking right at each other. I do see this guy has got a pleasant smile on his face over in here. So apparently the other one's talking about something pleasurable. Maybe a good looking fork in the tree on up from them or something. You never know. This one we've decided to give him a little bit more of the V-shaped hairline. And of course I'm going to do the same thing. It's just visual in this facial area here. He may be looking upward slightly since this one's up just a little bit. This guy may be looking at an angle upwards at his buddy. That may throw his nose upward on one side a little bit, which may throw his mustache and his whole face lending in this direction, with maybe even a directional in the eye eventually looking at this other guy. We're just mapping in, we're playing here, seeing what possibilities or potential that this particular piece of driftwood may hold. Their general areas, I will begin to clean them up. Here is the lower area down here
See, I've got this nice area left to make a third party eventually to go in, tie in with these guys. Maybe these two guys are telling a joke or a lie or a fib, and this particular guy is eavesdropping or listening into them. So we'll see how number 3 develops as we get into this. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to begin to clean our wood. Notice this bark and loose stuff on the wood. There's some loose bark, this, that, and the other. I will spend a little bit of time cleaning off the carving area of my wood, and as soon as you and I get back together, we're going to go through a small list of tools that I'll be using along the way. Then we're going to get down to the excitement of creating our tree troll family here. Get your tools ready. Well, I don't know about you folks there at home, but the excitement's really beginning to build for me. I can already picture these guys starting into this particular piece of wood. As I mentioned on the first little clip there that we was talking about, that I would get into some of the tool usage that I will be using. Okay, here is the biggest tool that I have. It's an 1.5 inch, number 3, kind of a flat gouge. All I'm basically going to be using that for is to clean the surfaces, do my rough chopping and heavy wood removal with that particular tool. I do have a large V here. This particular V is approximately 1 inch by 1 inch. Most everyone don't have a V that big. If you don't worry about it. Just use a smaller one. You just have to V-tool the cut several more times. Being a production carver like Vicki and I both do, we have a tendency to color the handles on our tools to where they're all certain, the colors mean certain things to us. And we also use the larger tools that you can use going into the carving, the faster you can get to the finished product, which as a production carver, that's what you're the most interested in doing. My other tool that I'm going to use on the roughing out process is this large, probably 3/4 inch number 9 gouge here. I'll be using it for through the eye areas, under the nose, and to shape the nose. For right now, those are my 3 basic tools that I'm going to be using to rough in. Now I have a series of smaller number 9s, a 1/2 inch number 9, 1/4 inch number 9, a couple of smaller V's of probably of your choice, you know, if you're following along. These tools, you don't have to have the exact same tools that I'm using. Just compromise with your own tools and pick up the technique like I'm teaching, you know, if you don't have the particular tools. But I have quite a few number 9s are my main U-gouge type things, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and then a couple of larger ones. I've got a couple different sizes of V's down to a little 5/16 V that I'll be sitting in around the eyes and stuff with. And a couple of flat gouges, a couple of number 5s, 1 inch, number 5, 1/2 inch, and a number 3, about 3/4 inch wide, which I use for a lot of stock removal because you can maneuver it with your upper body power. I will be using a mallet to get into the meat of the matter. The first thing I'm going to do is to try to gain some height and the attitude for the whole positioning of the face. I may not take all of the time on the video since we're going to try to keep this particular project on all 3 of these faces under a 2-hour tape. We won't sit and burn up the whole tape time on stimulating the area, but we will take a little footage here and begin to show you how aggressive that you need to be a lot of times with driftwood. Notice right off the bat what I'm doing is trying to gain some height for the nose area. Right off. I call this stimulating the area a lot of times. I like to have those faces shaped up just about like I like to see them. Now what I do want to mention is where this guy's forehead is coming back and into the piece of wood, we're really going to get this angle from the nose going way up to the forehead. And see how my hair's kind of flipping forward just slightly there. Well, this guy is going to be a tree troll, so his hair is going to be whooping out and blowing. So the first thing we're really going to do is sink this forehead area way back into the wood and begin to set up this angle for the nose. Then we'll begin to round the face this directioning at the same time and stimulate the areas. Now, to give you an idea what I'm talking about, on this upper hairline, I'm going to begin to get real aggressive and move in with chopping motions, much like you would be using if you were chopping down a tree. Right about now, I'm beginning to get the feel of this particular piece of, this is a piece of catalpa, by the way. I don't guess I've mentioned what kind of wood it is. It's a piece of catalpa that I found driftwood right here on the lake that I live on Grand Lake. Upper Grand Lake has a lot of catalpa driftwood. Got a beautiful grain to it, so it finishes up into a nice carving. And as you can see, it's soft enough that you can make some speed or some production with it. If you're in the carving business, well, production, you've heard the term that time is money. Well, production is money in the wood carving industry. You've got to have something soft enough to where you can get a quick sellable project. A lot of times as I'm beginning to map something like this in, I'll say to myself, how much will this particular piece market for? And I'll say, well, I've sold pieces like this upwards of $250 with, let's say, 3 figures on it several times. See, we're going to have 3 faces on our project. So I'm looking at making $250 for myself, maybe more, maybe $300. You always want to get all you can get out of a piece of artwork. That's all there is to it. People ask me, well, how much can you get out of this piece of artwork a lot of times? And I'll say, well, all I possibly can get, which is kind of the truth of the matter when it comes to selling art. Now, I'm going to flow this off and up into his hair as I'm stimulating the area. And as I'm doing that, I'm beginning to see that I could raise his, see, I'm roughing his face in fairly small. And I have big room on this side to rough in. So I'm thinking, well, maybe I should slide his face up and in. See, his forehead's beginning to form here. Now, I'm thinking, let's move it up and in and enlarge the face a little larger to where I can end up with 2, let's say, brothers, about the same size of faces. So I'm going to begin to enlarge the initial area a little bit more. And all the time, I'm just sinking back into the wood further and further here. Going on the theory that if depth is strength, my stand keeps wandering away as I'm pounding it outwards here. Notice I'm working out and away from the face. I'm not working into it. This way I can begin to stretch it outwards. I'm beginning to structure in a lock of hair going up and around. I'm even cleaning the pathway up a little bit here for that hair to begin to lay on. This all kind of falls in the category of stimulating the area, like you heard me say. But as you can see, I'm beginning to lay the forehead area back and into the wood quite a bit. I do want to keep the general directioning facing towards his fellow tree troll here. Like I say, they're carrying on a conversation. Maybe they're gossiping about the guy who lives down here below them. So I'm going to take, without burning up a lot of film time, I'm going to take a little time off the camera here and stimulate this area, get it cleaned up with a little flow of the hair going, and then we'll get back together. If you guys are following along at home, begin to clean up an area and get ready. Keep this attitude in mind on the nose and this attitude on the face as you're going, just much like I have. See, I've got a high spot here. Begin to get you an area cleaned up, and the next time we get together, we'll scope in on the face a little bit further. Okay, I've kind of stimulated the area here. You can see that I'm really beginning to get a deep groove on this particular side of his face, because I'm wanting to force this character to be talking to this one over here eventually, and I'll do the same thing. I'll force the attitude of his face this direction. If you're not with me as far as what I'm saying, forcing the attitude, the center of the nose has a lot to do with the attitude. And notice I'm going to put the center off to the right here. So this is going to be the center of my nose area. What I'm going to do is determine approximately by the 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3 that we talked about before. I'm just going to divide up approximately where I think this chin is. And I'm thinking it's going to be right down in about here. I've already got this black mark across here, as you can see, for the nose area. So I'm just going to lightly sketch in this area right through here for his eyes. Now here's another trick. If this particular guy up here is up above him, as I rough these eyes in, I'm wanting the eye on the right side of this particular man to be slightly higher than the other eye here on the left side. In other words, we'll give the attitude that he's looking this way, uphill. So the first thing we'll do is come down here and begin to gain some depth underneath the end of his nose. I'm going to take this large V that I have. Now my particular character, I'm wanting him to have a long character of a nose. He's going to have probably the most unusual nose that we've seen in a while. So for one thing, I'm going to dig out from under it a lot. In other words, you can tell that his nose is going to be terribly long by the time I'm digging out underneath of it here. The next attitude line that I'm going to come through is I'm going to take my large number 9. Like I said, this is about a 1 inch, maybe 3/4 to 1 inch number 9 U-gouge. And I'm going to come right through this angle on the bridge of the nose area. See how I've got it at an upwards angle with my attitude looking up. You can already tell he's visiting with his buddy just above him here in the old tree limb. I'm going to begin to waste away a little bit of wood on each side of the nose area with that same large number 9. About that time, I'm going to take this big number 9 right up the attitude of his nose and set it. Now I'm going to tip my face forward into the camera and say, see this niche where the brow is across this high brow? Then there's a niche where the nose goes up and fits into that. Well, I'm going to pull, that's what I'm doing on my carving, is I'm taking this tool right upside down and setting a nice round bridge of his nose. Then I'm going to work some of the excess off each side of the nose area here. And let's really put a point on his nose. So I'm going to take this same number 9 tool, upside down, right over the end of the nose, and bring it right down to my V-tool marking for right now. Okay, so you see I've rounded up the end of his nose right here. While you got that big tool in your hand, let's reach up here to the side and hook a giant wing of a nostril way up. See how I've chopped some of that wood away on each side and got the middle of his nose really winged down there. Now while we got this big number 9 tool in our hand, let's stay up way high on these big nostrils at an outwards angle and set one and set one on this side. As you can see, I'm setting the wings of the nostril of his nose Notice I'm going at an outwards angle. I want to leave plenty of room for the nose to get it, the wings of the nose to work in. Keep in mind as you're working wood, if you've never heard the old term, you can take it off but you can't put it back. This definitely applies in subtractive art such as wood carving. You want to keep that in mind at all times. Don't kill your potential by going in and roughing in a small little old tiny teeny nose. Then you have nowhere to work. With a big honker like this, as you're roughing in, you can continue to work it on in. There again, this particular guy is hopefully going to be laughing, talking, having a good time with his buddy here in the tree. So I want to leave lots of character potential, and I'm sure that this big nose is going to come in handy as we go. I am going to depthen that bridge through the eyes and right through the middle of the nose one more time with that large gouge to pick up those chips. And about that time you'll start noticing that you've got some excessive wood on these high cheek places at that time. We'll just simply take your old big gouge, the biggest, flattest gouge you got, turn it upside down, and pull that back down and into the face just a little. Notice I've done this one slightly higher than this side, so I'm keeping the attitude of this guy looking up all the time by certain cuts that I'm making to maintain the attitude of the face that I'm after. I am going to plane off a little of the cheek on both sides, because my idea for this particular guy is going to be in a smiling face effect. Right now, I know you can't hardly see it on the camera, so I'm going to take and draw in a rough eye socket area to give you an idea here. I'm looking for a little better pencil than the one I got. Doesn't seem to be marking real well. We'll just roughly sketch in these two eye socket areas to give you an idea that he's looking over this way. And then right from behind the nostrils, this is the wings of the nostril, we're going to throw in his mouth barrel and begin to pull it around and into a mouth barrel. Now notice I'm getting awful close down in here to this knot, or this hole in the tree area. But then again, when you're doing spirit faces, you kind of got to let the driftwood do a little talking for itself, so to speak. Little pun there, did you get that? Since we're getting ready to carve his mouth barrel. Now I am going to force, if he's smiling and talking, this mouth barrel with my big V, I'm going to begin to force it out and around. And notice how I tip that big V up on edge, and I'm going to plane the mouth barrel inwards. Here I'm going to start right over the nostril, this way, right back towards his face, over the nostril, straight down along the side of the nostril, and then I'm going to begin to bear outwards on this particular cut. What we're doing, as you can see, is beginning to gain some depth out here on this smile line. We're going to end up with a nice roundness on the character of our person here. Now, since the grain on this other side is going a little bit strange, I'm kind of in a knot area. It's not going to go real easy right in here. But I'm going to tip my V and begin to set the attitude of this side of his face. And I'm going to go ahead and run underneath of where I'm sure that his lip area is going to end up being eventually. I'm tipping that V tool to use the side of it. You can see I'm really beginning to gain for depth on each side of the mouth barrel area. Okay, not only do I want to begin to develop this area, but I also want to begin to develop the eye socket area. Now folks, if you can gain this little maneuver from this particular video, it sure help you out when setting up. I'm going to draw this into the corner of the eye and back out.
and then the bottom of an eye socket. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm keeping him at an upward swing because he's looking up and over towards this direction. See, our guy will end up looking that way. So we're wanting to keep the attitude of these orbitals all the way in to begin looking over that way. Now eventually what I want to see here is deeper wings on the top of the nostrils here and here, and deeper mouth barrel all the way around this area. I'll eventually end up on this hump as I work it in with his mouth coming across right down in here with a nice smile on his mouth. I know this is still rough. It's going to give you a little idea of what we're fixing to map ourselves in. Up here, right in the corners of the eyes, I'm going to take this large number 9 and I'm going to run it in to the corner of the eye. And as I'm coming into the corner of the eye, I'll try to turn where we can get a little better idea of what we're doing. And turn that tool, look at there, I'm turning it right with what I'm doing. And then I'm just going to begin to rake it up and out of there with that chip. That's right in the corner. See, I'm making that nice round. I'll do that one more time. I came in here, and right as I got into my magic marker cut, I began to roll the tool back out. You can even take that cut right on to the outside there if you want to. Kind of get good depth in there. Now I'm going to come over here and do the same maneuver on this side for you. I'm going to kind of come right up kind of the side of the nose. Notice I'm beginning to roll that tool. I know my hands are getting in the way here some, but you can see I'm rolling it, setting it good into the corner for depth, into the corner of the eye, and begin to depthen that area out. So I'm getting some depth right here on the inside corners of the eye. One other maneuver here that I'd like to see you do is we know that he's going to end up with big bushy eyebrows up here above his eyes in this area and this area. So along about this time would be a good idea to take your large U-gouge like I just had with the nose and run it right in between those eyebrows and then swing it over the top of the eyebrow and around and out. In the same way the other way here. And as you can see, this is going to begin to give you two distinct heights for your eyebrows. Now these bottom lines of the eye sockets with this big U-gouge, just go ahead and kind of run them over and off a little on both sides here. Okay, what I want you folks to do at home is you can begin to see your project developing now. I'm getting a little more excited about this particular guy. You might even want to begin to start thinking of a name for your character as you go, because by this time you can see he's beginning to pick up some sort of character, and he's almost got to have a name before he gets along much further. So bring your pieces, do a little cleaning up on them. I'm going to do some cleaning up on mine. When we get together next, we're going to reset the nose, get a better smile line, and begin to create some depth and strength into the face that we've got started. Okay, at this point, I said we were going to do some cleaning up. Now what I've done, folks, since this particular piece of wood has a lot of moisture in it, it's real wet. I've had to make a series of stop cuts. For instance, with this number 3 flat gouge I went all the way around this face, just like I'm showing in here, and made a series of stop cuts, even with a mallet, all the way around here. Now, to clean up, you can notice the moisture. See how wet the wood's looking on this one side? It is very wet. It'll dry out as we go, but it's a root of a tree is the reason why there's so much wood in it. But now, with those stop cuts on the face line like that, all the way around the hairline, with them there, notice how I can begin to clean up the forehead real nicely
right to those stop cuts. So that's the reason I was pointing this out, that if you had those stop cuts there, not only that, notice the depth that we're gaining on his face and his hair. We've got his hair kind of whipping back out. We've got a good inch raise here. We've got him back in, which all sets for good shadowing and eventually for a real good strong piece. But you'll notice I just continue to work the edges of this guy on in and on in. Even this temple area, we're going to pull it in. And of course we're going to leave a real nice big rounding lower bulby area on this face, because we want him to be laughing just almost in hysterics. His buddy up here is probably telling him some sort of a naughty tree joke or something. Get it? Naughty. Yeah, tree joke. Oh well, it's a good thing I'm a wood carver, not a comedian, right? Okay, so I'm beginning to clean the line, really depthen up the side of that face. Notice the strength that's beginning to pull us in along the side of the face here, all the while. Any harsh squared areas, for instance, there was a real harsh line here on his face. I'm beginning to round them off, do a little sculpting. We know that his nose rounds up towards his nose a little nicer, so spend a little bit of time in there with a tool, rounding some stuff up, cleaning some stuff up. I'm cleaning some of these heavy chips on the bottom side of his eye up. I'm beginning to get this roundness started across here on the top of these cheek areas. I'm also beginning to steal a little wood off the top of the eyebrow areas and clean up the forehead as I'm going here. I realize my hands are probably right in the way once in a while I'm cutting. If any of you has ever tried to videotape yourself carving, you'll realize that it's pretty hard to keep your hands out of the way of the tape a lot of the times. Okay, at this point we've got good strength down this one side of the face. We've got some direction going up to our buddy up the hill here. I think we should scope on in on this nose now. I have got about a 5/8, maybe a 1/2 inch number 5 gouge. It's not got much of a curve, just a little bit of a curve there. What I'm going to do is get on this nostril at an outward swing, in other words towards the outside of the nostril. Remember, it was way too big when we first set it in. Well, now's the chance where I'm going to run that tool right around that nostril and then right back against itself. Looky here how I can pick that chip up behind that nostril. Get here where I can show you one more time. As you can see, this wood is very exceptionally wet. The chips are not popping loose like they probably would be if you're working on some drier wood. As you well know, you just have to learn to adapt to whatever kind of problems that the driftwood throws you along the way. Some of these spirit people are born a lot easier than others. But we'll work both the nostrils with that number 5 upside down. I'm just mainly narrowing them up at this point and cleaning up some of the meat on the nose back behind them. Now, where I have the line drawn for the good cheeks, we can take a lot of times a tool with a small amount of curve to it. Here's a 1 inch number 5, for instance. Got a small amount of curve to it. And there's times when I can take that tool upside down, right here coming out from beside the nose, and use that tool to set that mouth barrel, the natural curve of it, up and under. Now I'm going to tip it the other way and meet that same cut I just cut. I know my hand's in the way. And notice I've got that stop cut there. And now I'm going to work against it, right to it, and begin to depthen in this mouth barrel and really bring the corners of this mouth back. This is the whole idea of what I'm trying to get across. I think you can see it what we're doing here is we're bringing the corners of that mouth back, and as we're bringing the corner of the mouth back and in, we're going to begin to sculpt the lower cheek kind of round, bring it right in to hook up with it. Now I'm going to come over on the other side and set that rounding motion with that number 5, first upside down, then work myself up to it. Then I'll begin to curve down towards the mouth burrow with the rest of it. Nice depth on the corners of the mouth barrel is what we're after. This way we can get this guy into a nice grin, or like I say, we might even decide to open his mouth. He might even have some teeth showing before this is over, you never know. But I'm working the mouth barrel area at a nice mellow smile. Now back on the nose, let's take us a V-tool of some sort along about this time and start right over the wing of the nostril. Clean that line. Let's also come underneath the edge of the nose here, the nostril. I'm using the edge of that V and I'm cleaning up that mouth barrel. I'm cleaning this line up to it. So you got kind of a three-way line cleaning up. The nostril coming over, underneath the nose, and then this line here. We'll come over and do the same thing on this side. See, I'm beginning to clean over the nostril right towards the face. Then I'm going to clean up underneath the nostril here with that V-tool a little. And then of course the line for the mouth barrel itself. Okay, now that we've strengthened up this particular portion of the nose and the mouth area, let's go back and concentrate on some good depth on the insides of the eye area here. Now I've got my V-tool, and what I'm going to do, folks, is I'm going to come into the corner with the V, like this, from the bottom, and then over and in at the top. Now notice that I'm tipping that V-tool just the right amount to where I'm beginning to mound up this area here. See how I'm coming in and back out, and I'm beginning to mound this up. Now on the shape of the eye that we would like to see happen, we're wanting a nice arch over and back off right here. We're going to come over the eye and swing over and off the end. So as we're bringing this V-tool marking around, I've got that big V again, but I'm going to hook right in here, come over, and then begin to sweep up as I come off with this setup, which I'm wanting to keep some excitement with the man. And not only that, he's looking over and up here. So I'm going to, at an angle, take this whole eye socket angling up towards the subject that he's visiting with, or he's looking at. See how I'm tapering it this direction, the top of the orbital. It's going to highlight him looking right towards his buddy pretty soon. We can depthen right here and get a little bit more character look, which is at the first or the beginning of the eyebrows. And this will all kind of work the edge of the nose. As you can see, I'm kind of sculpting the nose a little, and that cheek area, kind of the same time. I've got that 1/2 inch number 5 right now is what I'm using. I'm kind of cleaning up, shaping the nose a little bit. Maybe even shape the bottom of this eye socket. You begin to see that this mound, I've got a high spot right in the center of it. It's becoming a mound. So now we're going to come over with the V-tool and do the same thing on this side, except we're going to keep our arch going upwards to look at the guy up above. I will have to use a mallet here just a little with this, I think. And over and off. And keep in mind that we're going to have the opening for the light here, just like I did on the other side, kind of pointing up towards his buddy. But you'll begin to set this eyelid looking up towards the other guy too. I am going to clean this eye socket along the bottom here a little, kind of over and off. Both sides here. You'll just have to begin to, for instance, where it's coming into the corner of the nose right here is not deep enough. So I'm going to begin to depthen this over and in and over and in. Remember how I've done that on this side. Okay, we've got some good depth beginning to happen there. I'll do the same thing with the brow on this side where this black mark is right here. I'm going to take this number 5 upside down and pull the brow area in just a little more, trim up the side of the nose, pull some of this off. And I'm working the side of the nose and the eye here together. And also working the orbital around and back. You'll kind of have to just use your own judgment as your man is developing there at home as to what he might need to help him look a little nicer along the way. This particular guy's coming along fairly decent. I am going to pull a little out between on his forehead area. He's got a high peak area on his forehead. Okay, he's beginning to set in there fairly decent. I think he's heavy on the top of this orbital over on this side. I will go ahead and tilt my V just a little, pull that on in. Now it's along about this time to where we can go ahead and add the outsides of the orbitals. In other words, we'll round them, the niches on in here and here. And I'm just going to take a V and begin to set in the outside of that orbital just a little bit. Which at about this time in the game you're beginning to realize that he's got quite an eyeball going here. I call this whole area the orbital setup because we're not ready to set the eye in onto it yet. We're still getting the general shape that we're after, looking over and up. And we're going to come over on this side and try to do the same thing. Get that orbital back in there like we'd like to see it. Now just about the time we got both of these orbitals coming along like that, we can probably get by with taking something like this is about a 1/2 inch, maybe a 5/8 number 9. And we're wanting the arch in our lids to be both looking up here towards the other guy. So I'm going to start them right here and make an arch, and here and make an arch. Both kind of go in the same directioning. I keep stressing that directioning thing, and I think you'll be able to see it. But now I'm going to take this round gouge and run right across that mound and back and into the corner of the eye. Same way here. As soon as you run that cut that I just run right there, you'll begin to realize that he's got the top lids already set up on this. He's looking uphill. We've pretty well got this particular little guy underway. What we're going to do is throw him in a septum dimple, or the old snot trough right here, so to speak. I've got that 1/2 inch number 9, maybe a 3/8, it's a little smaller. And I'm going to begin to put in a pretty good trench underneath that nose for the septum dimple.
Now we'll begin to V-tool our mouth coming across. Now I'm going to stay down pretty low because we want to get some unrealistically big lips or a big smile on this guy, and we want to be able to curve it and coming up into the tuck or the corners of the mouth here. So we're beginning to pull these areas up. Now as we pull the smile up, we can begin to realize that we could work the cheeks a little bit more. So I am going to take a flat gouge and do a little rounding, cleaning. I may pull these particular mouth barrel on back in the corners just a little. At this time I am going to take a little bit of time. You'll notice every now and then I'll tell you to stop the tape, and I'll usually mark it out at proportioning times. Bring yourself up to the points that we just done on the last segment. Now if you're behind or I'm running ahead of where you're at, that's the neat thing about video, is just simply back it up, bring yourself up to this point. I'm going to clean my carving up a little bit. I may even come up here while we're off the tape and begin to lay in some directionals on the hair. For instance, I may put a wild curl V-line up through here and coming over. I might throw a couple of heavy V-lines going in certain directions, one down, up and over, maybe one off this direction, and begin to lay in some wild hair on the top of him here, and the same way off from his beard coming down this other direction. I'm going to throw in some heavy V-tool markings a couple of places to begin to get the feel or the mapping in of his beard going downhill. I'm not going to get down into this area because eventually I'm going to do another face in there. I'm going to do a little cleaning up and setting in on this particular guy. The next time we get together, we're going to carve the eyebrows, the eyes, carve the nostrils in, and we'll bring the realism on into this one particular person right here. Then we'll get on to the other character and bring him along, which doesn't mean along the way we might not do some jumping from back and forth, from character to character. So take some time, get your pieces cleaned up, and we'll talk about him again here in a little bit. Okay, I have spent a little time cleaning up. I've set some directionals like I talked about on the hair. There was a big chunk broke off. Usually it's been my experience when something like that happens, it didn't mean to be there anyway, so I knocked it off. I started styling some whips and curls in the hair. We've got good depth. Sneeze about to get me, folks. Got good depth down along this side. It may be this wood. Pardon me. Depth down along this side. I've got everything cleaned up. Now, I don't think on this particular wood you can see the lips real well because of the coloring of the wood. But now I am going to, I've got a number 3/4 inch, and I've used it this way upside down, coming around the bottom lips, and I've got it upside down this way, and notice how I can make that angle for those lips across there. See how I've got that tool following right around, and it's making those nice rounded lips. Then I've done the bottom of the lip the same way. I worked right against it all the way around to get that nice crease for the mouth. Now what I'm going to do is come underneath of here with a U-gouge and get a little bit more depth underneath that bottom lip. I'm a little careful right in this area. As you can see, I'm lacking for wood, but not only am I lacking for wood, it's dry and kind of punky right along the outside surface of this particular piece of driftwood. So I'm having to spend a little bit of time here being careful. But I'm running a U-gouge underneath the bottom lip, and it doesn't hurt to give the effect up into the corner that the bottom lip actually tucks kind of under the top lips. Along about this time, you might notice that I've came in here with a round gouge and really got some depth
pulled them boogers out of the nose, opened it up. He's beginning to breathe a little bit. We've got our eye sockets in. This guy is really beginning to gain some spirit about him. I think he's probably a spirit face. We were debating earlier whether he was a tree troll or a spirit face, but I do believe this guy is a spirit face. I am going to take a V-tool at this time and my black pencil here, and if you can't see the line on the eye that I'm seeing, it's right along here, this arch. There is a line from when I'd run that U-gouts through the middle of that mound earlier. There's a light pencil marking, but maybe you can see it. So what I'm going to do, folks, is I'm going to take my V-tool and run this line, and I've angled the V just enough to where I'm creating the, now over and in, top eyelid, and on this outside I'm going to come right on over and off the side of the face. Right on off with that particular cut. Now I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing. Right on off the side of the face and into the corner of the eye, right over and into the corner. Now that's going to create my top eyelids on both sides there. I might work this one just a little more. It doesn't. At this point you may have to work back and forth until they begin to look right for you. Now the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to draw in our bottom eyelids. And I'm going to open them up, but I'm also going to open them more on the side towards this guy up here and get them narrow as they come in towards the corners of the eyes. And just the opposite on this side. I'm going to make it larger on this side and narrower at the other, which is an unrealistic eye. In other words, most generally eyes would not be both wide on the same side like this. But we're going to do this to show direction purposes, which this is kind of a little comic piece. You can get by on these character pieces with a lot of anatomy stretching. So this is kind of one of those places where we're taking artistic license to get in here and do what we want to do. And I'm going to take this small 5/16 V the bottom eyeball, the bottom eyelid here, coming across and in. And then I may have to spend some time with the edge of the V, really making those eyes kind of rounded up. Notice how I use the edge of the V to plane that pupil round. I'm going to come over to this side and begin to do the same maneuver. Most times I'll warn to try to keep the corners of the eyes kind of going across from each other. This one is higher than this one, but then the whole character of our piece is kind of that way. So we'll try to keep them straight across, but then if they're not quite straight on this particular guy, I'm not going to be as upset as I would if we were working on a really realistic piece. Like I said, we can kind of let ourselves go on these spirit faces, have a little fun along the carving way. Now that I've got my eyeballs cut in on both sides here now, I'm going to take my knife. I've got a fairly sharp pointed knife here, and I'm going to come right to the inside corner of this eye. I'll try to get where you can get a little better idea of what I'm doing, and make a stop cut in the corner and a stop cut on the other in the corner. Reach right there and pull that inside corner out. Now come right over to the other eye while we're doing inside corners and do the other eye. There's one cut. There's the other cut in the corner. And that's going to let me reach right in here. Oop, didn't come out that first time, which happens. This wood's terribly wet, as you heard me say earlier. So that is going to have a little bearing on cleaning this eye up. But anyway, I've made the two inside cuts. Now I'm going to come to the outside of the eye and make that corner cut there and here, and reach right in here and pull that corner out. I'll do
same thing on this side. I'll make a stop cut right at the corner of the eye, and on the bottom of the pupil right at the corner of the eye, and pull that piece out of the corner as to really begin to get some roundness from side to side going. Now folks, at this point I'm going to take my knife and slide a stop cut right across that V-line to just simply connect the two corners. I'll do that top and bottom on both sides. This particular wood's really wet, so it's going to give me a little bit of trouble. But now what I'm going to do is sit right here and begin to sculpt this eyeball, or the actual pupil of the eye, sculpt it round, clean up as you're working along in here. The more time you can spend right in here on these eyes, rounding them up, the nicer they're going to look for you. And as you can see, I'm beginning to get a nice roundness. I'm leaving it high on the upper top side here and here. I'm going to leave it as a high spot. I'll spend some time carving both of these round. I'll probably take the time as we're running low on our footage now. Here's the other place I want you to do some depth, is take your knife and get just a little shadowing along the backs of the wings of each of the nostrils of the nose. As you can see, just by capturing that shadow in here a little bit more, where I just done that niche, it begins to strengthen up the face. Now the other place that you can strengthen up would be right here. Take your knife and run a nice stop cut right down the bottom of his lip there, right in the very crease of his mouth, and pull out just a little shadowing. You can see I've got just a little chip, stop cut it in, and I'm cleaning it up. And hopefully you can see just a little shadow beginning to happen. A lot of times will really add strength to the piece. So you can get a nice crease run in the center of his mouth, capture you a nice shadow. You know, you'll have to take some time, much like we're talking about up here on the eyes, rounding stuff up. Clean that up. Get your nostrils cleaned in there. I'm going to give you one more step before we go off air this particular time, and that is to take a 1/4 inch number 9 up here on your eyebrow area and begin to lay us in some eyebrow directionals, up and over and up and over. Don't get into a repetitious movement with this U-gouge. Just go across there 4 or 5 times on each side with a U-gouge and lay in 4 or 5 rough ones, and then come back with a V-tool and put in a couple of V-toolings in here. The other thing that we can do on our character to really begin to gain some strength on him also is some directionals or character lines on this forehead. Now, since he's looking uphill at his other buddy, maybe we would be better off to keep him just arcing in the same direction as the general direction of his face. Just arc these lines up here a little bit. So these are some things that you can go ahead and put in. The next time we talk, I'm going to have my eyes rounded up and ready to put the pupils in. I'm going to put a few crow's footings in the corners of the eyes, and probably some eyelids along the bottom of my eyes here the next time we talk. This particular face is going to be coming down the lines of being finished, and we'll begin to start in on his buddy over on the other side. Okay, I've got most of my eyeball area cleaned up on the carvings. I've got them rounded in. You might notice that I've got some black lines drawn here on this face right now. If you could pull in and let's research these lines. I have pulled the lids down a little closer to the contour of my eyes, but notice this in and out thing, this in and out. This is such a subtle line, but I find, notice I've got this one higher, there again, looking up, and this one lower coming in.
I'm doing this for directional purposes towards the other person up here. But what I'll show you what all this is I've got a 1/2 inch number 9, and I'm just barely gonna wipe out the line that I've drawn in. And as I come into the corner of the eye, I'm gonna go to the smaller 1/4 inch. This is a number 9 also. One was a 1/2 inch, one was a 1/4. So right in the corner of the eye area, I'm going to get tight with a smaller tool. Same way from the tops here as we're coming into the corners. I'm going to drop into the corner of the eye just a little bit here. Okay, now where they go on off over the face, we're going to go back to the bigger one and just make a transition in the form is all we're after. See that nice transition is beginning to happen. As we hit this with some sandpaper a little later, these transitions will become more apparent. Now I'm going to come over here and just barely scrape out this line that I just marked in on this side, coming into the corner of the eye. And over here and out. You can see that that's beginning to really highlight, let some of the light out. I am going to take a small V-tool at this time and run over my eyelids one more time and kind of accentuate them, so to speak. Some nice depth right in this upper inside corner of the eye. Clean up those sleepy boogers out of the corners of the eye here as we go. This particular wet wood, as you've heard me say before, does not clean up real well. Now look here what I'm doing. I'm going to take my V-tool and bring in the bottom eyelid line across here, following the contour of the eye, right up into the corner of the eye, kind of giving a tucking effect that the bottom lid is tucking under the top. And I'm going to V-tool a couple of crow's feet out of the corners of the eyes. The bottom ones I'll cut going downwards, over and down, and the top ones I'll put a couple of them going over and up. I'm going to add a couple of V-tool markings on my eyebrows here as I'm dressing up. You'll be surprised, just a couple little V-toolings in amongst those U-gouge markings that you made for the eyebrows will begin to accentuate those up a little bit. They'll catch a little stain whenever we begin to get to the finishing process on this guy. Once you've got your lids pulled in, you can pull in a couple of small wrinkles coming into the eye area and on this bag of the eye. At this point on the face, you'll just need to work around here and there to try to clean up anything, any harsh lines. For instance, if this line's a little harsh, which it is, I might soften it off just a little bit. Now, as far as our eyeball directionals, I want him to have plenty big eyeballs looking over and up at this other guy. I'm going to take my 5/8 number 9 and come in here at the upper angle looking up at this guy and just skate me a circle here. I'll do the same thing about the same place on this particular eye. I'll skate me a circle looking up on both ways. Now you can't hardly see it at that moment, so what I'm going to do to help you see that is to take the corner of my knife, now that I've got the cut there, and reach right in here and work the edge of that back just a little to where you'll be able to see it. This is mostly where your stain can get down in this area and really show direction on this eye. I'm going to depthen it with my knife just a little. This wood being wet, as you can see, is still kind of giving me fits. But notice the shadow that's forming along the line where I'm accentuating the eyeball. See the shadow I'm beginning to capture there now. So I'll do the same thing on the other side. I'll trim just a little bit out of the eyeball area. Capture that shadow that I'm talking about.
trying to keep my hands out of the way of the camera the best here I can. But you can see what I'm doing is after I've skated that roundness for the eyeball, I'm removing just a little bit of wood and capturing that shadow for the directions. I've got both eyes looking up at the other guy. Now I'm going to take a smaller U type of a gouge. I saw one there laying earlier. Here's one. This is approximately a 1/4 inch number 9. And I'm going to run it at a directional also. I'm going to nib it looking up at this guy and nib this one looking up at this guy. Now I'm going to take my knife and clip that particular little circle and pull it out of there. Even if I have to run my knife in it like this right here, you notice we're capturing a good shadow on that pupil. Up. We'll do the same thing here. Of course, the stain, when we stain, our man's going to really take care of this area. But it wouldn't hurt me to take a leaded pencil here and just run it in there for just a second to give you an idea of where I just made the orbitals or the eyes, pupils going over and up. And if you kind of zoom back there just a little bit, you can kind of see we've got this particular guy is beginning to look up and he's smiling. Apparently this guy must be talking about something. This guy's listening. He's leaning an ear. Notice how he's leaning into him. He's smiling. He must really be enjoying the good juicy gossip that he's getting from his upper neighbor. Now folks, I'm going to start in here on just a clip of me beginning to clean this area off the same way with much of the attitude downwards towards this particular guy. I am going to set a heart-shaped hairline on him. Remember when we talked about that back at the first? I'm going to use the same procedure we went through. I'm going to go deep to get that forehead back in there. But then on the other hand, keep in mind that he's looking down at this guy. So I'm going to get the forehead back in a little ways, but I'm going to concentrate on pulling the chin down and into the wood more to give this particular character the effect that he's looking down and talking to this particular guy. So as I begin to rough in here, I'll let you guys just kind of fade away as I begin to rough in on this particular area. Okay, at this point in the game, I've begun to set the general attitude of my other man here. I'll mark it out to where you can see what I'm saying. Is I'm going to try to maintain this type of an attitude, this time with the nose in the center of the face, leaning downhill, throwing the emphasis here. This particular guy, as I develop him, I would really like to get the sense that he's saying something or talking or with his mouth open, maybe even with teeth. Sometimes teeth are fun. You know, you can add a lot of character to the guy. So as he begins to develop, I think that's kind of the way I see him, is a mouthy dude, let's say. You know, this particular tree spirit. This little troll guy, I see these roughness that I've left up here with the chainsaw. Didn't know right off, hand what was going to happen. But we're thinking maybe we'll end up carving these into some leaves, having his head, coming right out from underneath the leaves, much like he's poking his face right out through the leaves, and beginning to talk to the other guy on the trunk here. So the attitude for the eye arch this time is going to be just the opposite as what it was last time. I'm going to put it at a downward throw here, or downwards angle. The bottom of the nostril I'm going to make higher on one side than the other one. That'll help the attitude. Of course, eventually the nose is going to be roughing in these general areas. As you can see, I'm leaving myself plenty of room. Always rough in way bigger than you need to be. I also see this particular guy with his mouth barrel coming down and around, and possibly even, like I said, talking. We may throw some teeth in along this line, make him like a little ornery grin or something.
and we'll put the directions of these particular eye sockets to where he's going to be looking down this way, just to give you an idea, talking to his buddy here in the tree. So this is probably the old local guy who lives in the tree who likes to get around and spread a little gossip or something. I think you'll begin to see his character develop. He's got a big wide nose, the way I've drawn it, and I think it would be just an excellent thing to see if we couldn't capture that big wide nose. I'm going to take maybe this number 5 right here, upside down, and begin to go over the end of the nose, right in the center. And I'm going to use the natural curve. Notice how I'm just following the curve of this number 5 to create this big old bulby nose. And I'm setting it in pretty good on an outwards angle. Keep that in mind that we're doing this at an outward throw all the way around. So as I'm beginning to develop that depth, I'm going to take my V-tool at an outwards angle also, mind you, and pick up underneath of that, get rid of some of this wood that's back underneath there, beginning to bring these smile lines back and in with that large V-tool. I'm going to go ahead and run this on up towards the corners of the eyes a little bit with the V, since we know we need to remove some wood in that general direction anyway. And I'm going to go back to the large 1-inch number 9 tool, and I'm going to come right through here where I drew his eyes at an arcing angle. Right through, like this. Now down underneath of where I drew his teeth, I'm going to also make a dipping motion because of the way that his mouth and chin will eventually end up. We're going to need this arcing down here and some depth. So I'm going to clean up, coming up the side of the nose, much just like the technique I did on the last spirit face. I'll begin to clean this orbital out. I'll begin to clean up the side of the nose on this side, and begin to clean this particular orbital out on this side. And I'm going to begin to shape up his nose in the manner I'd like to see. So for y'all that are working on your people there at home, begin to clean up your face line. Get your nose beginning to start in. As you can see, mine's exceptionally big and bulby at this point. It's going to be the character of my man. I am going to end up running a U-gouge. This is a number 5 again, and I'm going right up my attitude line. Remember on the other side when I done this same maneuver? Right to the bridge of the nose. And that'll kind of help you get your nose going. See the bridge cut that I just made right up to there? That'll help you get your nose started to map in. So take yourselves a few moments at home there. Begin to go ahead and rough in. We've given most of the technique on this one first face. We have less than probably an hour, maybe 45 minutes of tape left on this particular tape. So we're going to do a little hit-miss on this particular guy. I'll show you a few procedures along the way. Then we're going to jump down and work on our third member of this particular driftwood. So go ahead and spend some time there cleaning up. Okay, I've begun to get the sitting in around the face. I've got some excitement lines, these big U-gouge marks coming up and over. I've really got the chin forced downhill on this particular face. It's a little bigger than this particular guy over here, but as I begin to scope on in on the face, it'll get littler and hopefully just about the same size as to match. Now I'm seeing this guy as talking, and if he's talking, he's probably laughing about something, so I'm going to put in the top portion of the lip, and I'm going to stair step
a place to set some teeth in there at the same time. So I'm going to take this large number 5 and just etch me a line right around his mouth, much like he's talking there. I've etched that line. Now I'm going to take a V tool and begin to clean up. I'll get a little bit smaller mallet here. And as I clean this line up, keeping in mind that I'm going to turn these into some teeth out here. So I'm going to V-tool under that secondary. See, I'm leaving a secondary bench here. It's kind of unrealistic. It's, you know, kind of goofy, so to speak here. But we'll get those going our direction. And we'll disappear and they'll get smaller as they come on around. Okay, the purpose of this is to where we can come in here, give a gap in between a couple of his teeth. When I put teeth in, I always like to do them a little bit bigger than they actually need to be, especially on a character type person like this. You're better off with bigger teeth than trying to make them look realistic, because regardless what you do, they'll never look realistic. And the only reason why we're putting these teeth in here is to show some real character to this particular piece. So I'm going to take a V tool and do some light V'ing to show sections in between the teeth. Like I say, make them a little larger than you think. Spend some time with your V tool in these areas, kind of cleaning up around what you've just set in. Now, a lot of times when I show teeth, I'll also show an over-exaggerated bottom lip. Let's loop it on down here a little ways further and really show depth in underneath the teeth in a couple of spots. I'm going to take this particular number 5 and drive it in pretty healthy here, because we're going to capture shadow back into the cavern of his mouth. Of course, I'll stop cut it on the underneath side of the teeth here. And once you've got that stop cutted real good, you can probably sit there with this, or maybe with your knife, and spend a little time digging it out. I've got a loose chip here. I may have to go back and do a little revamping on this mouth. I don't know whether that word revamping's in you people's vocabulary out there that's carving along with me or not, but that means go to plan B. And the meaning of that is when, for instance, you saw the chip fall off from his lower lip across here. Well, we'll just simply come back and reset that line one more time, and be a little more careful. Hopefully it won't fall off the second time. Because see, I am going to add this into the beard around this face line eventually. I've worked a little depth in around the edges of the noses, but I would like to see you, like I say, we are conserving airtime on our video, so you will just get hit and misses on this particular guy. Let's depthen up around behind both these nostrils. Let's come in from the side on one of these nostrils with a nice rounded gouge of some sort, and begin to get some good nostril wings, or actual nostrils here on both particular sides. On this guy with the big broad nose, I'm really putting him out on the wings on each side, notice. Really leaving that nose wider, that it fits the character of the particular guy. Get that septum dimple kind of cleaned up there. I will spend a little time on the teeth. I'll give you the example here, and then you guys can do some cleaning up. For instance, on these teeth, I'm going to come in with my knife in between them and do a little bit of a three-way stop cut situation. In between them just a little. I may round the edges of them over. Notice how I'm using a stop cut against a stop cut along here. You might want to spend a little time, you know, rounding them off to where they halfway decent like teeth. But you can see what I'm talking about here is you're going to have to work your teeth and take and niche out in between each one with your knife a little, and maybe capture some good depth in between them to where you can see that they're individualized teeth along here. So work this, get some depth in underneath the teeth. In just a moment we're going to run a U-gouge, 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch U-gouge underneath this bottom lip. We're going to begin to develop that area. One other area I would like to see you come in up here on this eyes. Notice how I've already got the attitude of his cheeks going around and his eyes way high. Look at the arch way high on these eyes. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come in with my V-tool and V-tool this line again, over and in. Then I'll V-tool the bottom line across here. I'll do it and then I'll show you what I've got after I get these lines V-tooled in, and I'll V-tool the bottom of the eye sockets a little bit over here too to get the eye socket area set up and ready to put the pupil in. Keep in mind that we're going to keep the attitude looking over here at his other tree troll buddy. Along about that time, remember when I put in the V markings, not V markings, but I used a 1/4 inch number 9 on these high eyebrow mounds that I've left to begin to get them in. I am going to clean this forehead area back and in underneath those leaves a little bit, and some depth along the edge of the smile lines with my knife for good depth. So I know that's a lot that I just told you to do. The next time you see this particular clip, I will have... Okay, the last time that we had talked, I hadn't even begun to rough in down here. But as you probably know, we're getting close to our tape limit on the tape here. So we're hurrying things right along. Now I have got this guy, I finished him on up yesterday evening after we taped for a little ways. I put in his eyebrows, I put his forehead back and underneath. I'm eventually going to develop this area up in here as leaves hanging off over his head. I've already got him kind of chopped in. All I'm going to do is begin to put some veinings with a V-tool up the center of the leaf and a few directionals, almost like if you were doing a feather on an indent or something, except upside down. And of course a leaf won't have too many directional deals in it, but I'll get the vein and then just a few. I will paint these with a light green. The rest of this we're going to go into staining and technique in a moment. You might notice that I begin to throw, like here, a curl line or two in. I will stimulate his hair up here a little more with it. I've got a large V-tool in my hand right now. I'm getting ready to stimulate this beard with some slow C's and S's, a few more places, and in his hair. As I was carving along, I came up with the name Ugin, Bugin, and Nod, because on this particular little guy, I don't know whether you can get a good shot and see him down here, not too well, but I've protruded his bottom lip upwards and brought the mouth barrel way back on both sides. I've left his eyes just closed like you would tightly be pouting. Is kind of the, he's either asleep, he's mad, or he's pouting. He's down here by himself. And Ugin and Bugin, I guess either way you want to look at them, this is undoubtedly Nod. They're up here telling some jokes about a few things. This guy will be more of a tree troll type guy with the leaves hanging over his head. This one is more of your spirit type face. And then as I bring the V-tooling in and join them right into the beards of and the hair of this guy, I'll just tie the whole piece together with my V-tooling. And to give you a little idea of what I'm talking about, I've got some of the V-tooling in here, but I'm going to take my time. I've got a little wider angle V than what I had been using, and I'm going to take the edge of that V and just begin to direction a few more of the beard lines Notice how I can tip this V over on its side and plane off any of these see these hard ridges right here? I'll begin to knock down some of the ridges. I'm going to spend probably 30 minutes or an hour working this whole beard on both sides around this guy and tie him. In other words, these guys' beards are kind of just flow right around this guy and right onto the bottom of the piece. The next time that we get together, I will have these leaves finished in and painted. I'll get the paint on them where they can be drying. We'll go into sanding just a moment, and we'll put the sealer on. And since we're getting close to our time on this tape, we probably better head down to the finish before long. So I'm going to go ahead and do this V-tooling off the tape here. Like I say, when we get back together, we'll come up the finishing stretches. Hi, we're back here with the finishing segment of the Tree Troll People. You might notice that we went ahead and painted some green paint on the leaves situation here, to where eventually these leaves will show through the staining technique that we're about to use. You might notice my lovely assistant here. This is my youngest daughter, Rebecca, and she's real interested in these tree troll guys that we're doing. So she's painted the green on the leaves up here for us, and she's going to help us with the finishing on this a little bit. We got to show them what we're using here. I'm using the satin finishing wax, the Watco satin finishing wax. This has a natural, and it also comes in the dark. This is the same stuff, except it's in the dark. What I will do here is shake this stuff up real good. I will mention that, because if you don't get it shook up, you don't get the pigmentation up mixed into the wax like it should be. Okay, the dark, I've got a little bit of it poured out here to give you an idea. It's a real liquid wax, and it's a darkish color. The neutral was white, but what I've done is I've dumped a little bit of the neutral into this jar, and I've just simply dumped a little of the dark over into it, and then kind of mixed it up. Now the idea being on this staining technique is we want their faces to be lighter colored than the rest of them. So what we're going to do is get up here and test a little area on the facial area to see if this is approximately the color that we're after for the face area. It looks dark on camera, but now the thing with the satin finishing wax is it will begin to mix back or lighten up as it dries. So I'm going to put Rebecca, here you go, to go ahead and start painting this color on the faces for us. Here you go. Take the brush and go ahead and just paint it all over his face right there. Now folks, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the darker color Watco and beginning to go around. Notice where I've been around the perimeter, pardon me, of his face, along here, and all around the surrounding areas on this guy's face. I'm just going to begin to highlight, so when we finally do get to do his face and the lighter stuff, the dark around, pardon me, the dark around the edges will help highlight their faces and stand it out. Now this waxing technique looks terribly dark when you're putting it on, but a little later on we'll do almost an antiquing solution. In other words, we'll begin to wipe it with a rag with some thinner or something and pick up the lighter areas on the highlights and let the wax stay dark down in the deep areas, which will really begin to give us a antiquing and shadowing solution. You can see we're going to paint both these faces with that color. I mentioned before that we named these guys Ugin, Bugin, and Nod. And we're not sure how we're doing as far as taping time goes. So what we're going to do is go ahead and begin to paint our solution all over our piece. And the next time we talk, we should have a finished product for you folks to look at. readjust. You're getting a little sloppy with your paint there, sister. Well, okay. Paint right there where you've missed. Okay. Here, move back around this way just a little. There you go. That way we can see what you're doing there. Now I'm going to go ahead and paint on this guy's face. Over here. Now we're giving this guy a Mississippi mud bath, aren't we?
Yeah.
This is kind of what I refer to as the old Mississippi mud bath, where you just go all over him with this solution and let it soak in. We might even chase it in with a hair dryer a little bit. A lot of times from time to time I'll take a hair dryer while I'm working this wax, and I'll kick it on and begin to work the piece. And what it'll do is it'll heat the wood and the wax up. I've got a little dripping off here. I was going to keep smoothing it out. But with a little heat over it sometimes as you're putting the wax on, it'll help it pull right on into the pores of the wood. It'll really see the wax beginning to move under the wind. But as it heats up, as the wax heats up, it becomes more liquid, and it will actually begin to pull into the wood more. You see it pulling in there, Becky? Look at it drying. Yeah, now that we've got the, you can see they look awfully dark at this point because we've went over them with a lot of the dark on the Watt coat. Now the next step of this finishing process is going to be, I'm going to take some regular paint thinner, and I like to choose a rag that doesn't have a lot of lint to it. I'm going to put a little paint thinner on the rag and just drip some down this one guy's face here. But now the first area that I'm going to concentrate on are the faces, and you'll notice right off they'll begin to lighten up as I begin to wipe them, see? So that's the first areas. The face was our focal areas, so that's the first place that I'm going to begin to concentrate on wiping back some of the darker wax. As you can see, I'm just continuing to work them. Rebecca helped me paint these guys with the satin wax, didn't you? She's quite an artist in her own right. She's been carving and painting and messing with clay ever since she was born. She's, how old are you now, Rebecca?
4.
4.
We're going on 5.
Going on 5. And
And I'm going to be 5 when
can you tell them anything about this carving here that we're doing?
I can tell them their names.
What is their names?
That's not down there.
Nod. Who's these guys?
They were their brother and sister, I bet.
Oh, the brother and sisters, you bet. Huh? Well, back at the beginning of this tape, you remember we went out into the Wood Spirit Village and spent a little time looking around for these guys. If you rewind back to the first of the tape, can you imagine that these were the guys that we went out to find when we first went looking for them? Now, folks, these guys aren't light. As you notice, as I'm wiping on this area, the highlights, the higher areas of the hair and the beards are beginning to get lighter, and they're staying dark back in the cracks. So that's kind of the purpose of this antiquing technique that I'm using. I do have a sandiflexor. I want to lighten up my piece just a little bit more because it's so dark that they're not as noticeable as they could be. But see how dark it's staying back in this area here? So what I'm going to do is take my Sandiflex and work over the face just a little bit in some highlighting areas with this sanding wheel. I'll show it to you on the next segment because I don't have it handy right at the moment. But I'm going to highlight the high spots to see if we can't lighten up all 3 faces, which are the focal point of our being. I might run it on the leaves up here just a little bit to really kind of accentuate what we've got on the leaves.
We'll take one look at it. At that point, if it looks halfway decent, we'll probably end up going on to it with a finishing coat or two of the Minwax finishing, paste finishing wax. And this particular kind is the special type that's developed for dark surfaces. So in just a moment, we'll go on with the finishing of these guys. Well, we've taken this Sandiflex, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. It's a flip sander, a lot of people call it. It's got serrated segments of sandpaper in 6 or 8 places on a wheel, on a drill, and of course, after the reasoning for using this over top of it, we'll show you here just a little bit, is see it's kind of given an antiquing effect. It's actually took the paint off on the green on the leaves. It's really taken the dark wax that we just put on to the faces here. I've highlighted heavily on their foreheads with that Sandiflex. It's left the dark down in the dark cracks, and it really photographs well by doing that. The whole time of the tape you've heard me saying that depth is strength. Now as far as a final finish on this particular project here, I've already mentioned this before, 2 or 3 coats of this particular Minwax will darken some of the lighted areas up just a little, but it will dry a little lighter usually than what it is. I hope you all have enjoyed carving with us through this particular project. And we've got 2 more tree troll spirit face, 3 more guys, Ugin, Boogin, and Nod, to add to our collection of spirit people. So this is Rex and Rebecca Branson coming to you from the Branson studio here on Grand Lake, thanking you for joining us for this edition of Woodcarvers Corner. So until we see you next time, goodbye.